Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. All right. Okay, well, welcome back, everybody. Like I've been saying for the last 3 videos, a lot has been going on, and we are super excited about what is to come here in the near future. I kind of want to spill the beans, and I kind of want to wait, but for those of you that live in my area, we'll put it this way. For those of you that live in my area, good things are coming. So we'll say that. And we'll leave it there. All right. Today, we've got a lot of stuff that is living in water and not happy about the fact that it's living in water. And so we got to get it moved out. For example, like this Aglaonema, something mixed with a tricolor. It was doing really, really good in water at first. Let me show that to you. It was happy. It was doing well. But then all of a sudden, for some reason, out of the blue, it fell apart. Like the leaves looked great, very much like the Thai. Like I don't know if you saw the previous video, but there's a video where we have the Thai constellation and it looks fine. Everything looks like it's happy and healthy. And we touched it and the whole leaf fell off, petiole and all. It just collapsed over and was done. It seems like Aglaonemas have a tendency to do that if they're in water too long. And the original goal was really just to kind of get them to build their root system up so that we could get them into whatever medium it was that we were going to decide to go with. But I wanted to grow out the roots a little bit, and traditionally I like to do that in water. And then in addition to that, in the import process, I like to leave them in water a little bit too, so that we can see what roots are going to grow, what roots are going to die off, and then just cut off what's going to die off and grow out what's going to actually be successful and do well. Well, it turns out that some plants don't like that as much. And I'm going to say that the Aglaonema is probably one of those plants, because it, I lost, I don't know, I guess only like 1 or 2 leaves, but just the same, yeah, I didn't like the fact that I lifted it out of water after it looked just fine, and I lost a whole like section. So like, if you look like right here, I pulled it out and only the top part came off. So just the leaf came off and the rest of it was in the water, and it looked just like it does like this in this picture. And this is a beautiful plant. I'll probably bring more of this in. So if you look at it, oh, rotunda, that's what this is. This is a cross between the rotunda and the Aglaonema pictum tricolor. I've got a tricolor. Hold on, let me grab a tricolor really fast. I'm gonna pause it, and then I'm gonna grab one. I don't have a rotunda. I don't even know what that looks like, but I do have a pictum tricolor, so we can look at that. Okay, so we're back. And this, obviously, I probably should pull this bottom leaf off. This was the oldest leaf, and traditionally the oldest leaves just don't do so well in import. But this is the Aglaonema pictum tricolor, and the coloration on the silver isn't quite as strong right now, so that may not show up on camera. But it's a younger one. So what we have with the rotunda crossed with the Aglaonema pictum tricolor is, you'll notice that army pattern that you'll see right there. So you've got the pink and you've got the light green, but you'll notice those spots of army color, or patches. We'll call them patches of army color. That's from the being crossed with the pictum tricolor. So it's kind of cool. It looks like it doesn't pick up the shape as much from the pictum tricolor, but it does get that patchiness of the different colors from the pictum tricolor, so that's kind of cool. I don't know if anybody's seen a pair of those together before, but there you have it. So that's neat. All right, so kind of going back to the topic at hand, we've got a lot of stuff that needs to be moved over from water into medium, and I think that we're going to play around with our Aroid mix. It's a fast drying Aroid mix that we put together. It's got a combination of bark, perlite, worm castings, cocoa peat, and I feel like I'm missing something. Bark, worm castings, cocoa peat. I think maybe that's it. If it's not, then I'll add it in there somewhere. But it's really good stuff. Here, let's bring this into the screen for a second. So basically looks like this. No. Maybe we can even go like this. I'll give you a little sample of it right there. All right, so that's what we've got. And it really is fast draining, which is what I like. But it's kind of interesting because what I found that I've been doing lately is I'll use a fast draining substrate, but I will mix that fast draining substrate. It's going to get louder for a second. I'm going to mix that fast draining substrate with some leca balls. So what I'll do is I'll put the leca balls down in the bottom, fast draining substrate in the top, and then the water can drain down into the leca balls, and then the evaporation process will allow the water to sit where the leca balls are and then evaporate back up into the dirt per se. It's not really dirt because it's soilless. There's no actual dirt in there. But it'll evaporate back up into there and then kind of give moisture to the root system. So it's kind of the process that I've been using lately. I want to get some more plants in that just to try it out and see what likes it, what doesn't. Still in that trial and error phase, and so I will let you know if it's successful by showing you updates on how those plants do at that point. Right, so let's get started. We will start with, let's start with this one. And I think this is one where I also have sphagnum moss with me. And so I think this is one where I think I kind of want to put this one in sphagnum moss. I feel like this would be happier in sphagnum moss than it would be in dirt. I don't know why. Maybe I will be wrong and need to do some research on that later on. But so far, my greatest successes and where my preference has really been for the most part is a combination of doing leca balls in the bottom and then going to sphagnum moss up top and allowing the roots to grow out in the sphagnum moss. I've had a lot of success with that. I don't have anything right on hand with me that will show that, but I like it because you can really see the root system grow. That's another reason why I like to use clear containers. You can see the root system grow, see how it's doing, how it's performing, and if it turns out that you're not seeing the amount of growth that you would expect over a little bit of time, say between 2 weeks and a month, then you can take another look, open it up, see if there's something going on with the root system, see if there's something going on with the plant. If there's a reason it's not happy, obviously it should show and demonstrate that through it not producing good roots, or from taking it out and having just a whole section of leaf fall off like this one did earlier. Alright, so what we're going to do with this one is, sorry about the noise, but we're going to create our reservoir, which is the bottom part there. I'm going to throw some moss in the bottom. I guess I should do that on camera a little bit. Yeah. Throw some moss in the bottom, which will give us the opportunity to have our root system grow. So we've got our reservoir, we've got our moss. And I didn't bring any perlite up, but I kind of want to try a mix of moss and perlite for a more tight and compact situation. But I don't have any perlite up here. But I think that you'll probably see that in a later video at some point in time, because that is something I do want to try out. My pedatum, my variegated pedatum, has that type of a setup in it, and I kind of like it, and so I think that we'll do that. So for this one though, what we're going to do is let's get the plant probably up where we've got plenty of room for leaves to be happy. Let's get that out of there. That looks like that's not good sphagnum moss. Kind of making a mess, but my IKEA tray is going to catch all that and do its thing, which is a plus. And That's fine. All right. So you'll notice that I'm doing something that I've mentioned in a previous video not to do, which is packing down the sphagnum moss or the substrate or the medium of whatever it is that your plant is sitting in. The reason why I feel okay to do that in this particular plant is because I don't. If you were to rewind the video, you would know that it really didn't have a very big root system on it at all. It just had basically some little nodes that were poking out, and obviously those aren't going to break off as easily. If it had a complete root system in there, I would definitely not go through this route, and I would actually pour the water in, and then once the water was in, I'd either tap the bottom or I'd tap it on the bottom of the table or something to that effect. But in this case, I think that we're going to be okay, just because there's really no root system to break off. All right, so let's grab some root water, and we're just gonna. Most people will traditionally get the sphagnum moss wet and then squeeze it and let it dry out that way. I have not been doing that. I don't know if it's in part just because I wouldn't say that I'm quote unquote lazy, but what I'll do is I'll fill it up and then just allow the water to go into the reservoir, and then I'll just kind of turn it like this. So I'm going to go through this motion right here and allow the water to get soaked up by the sphagnum moss through that process, just like that. And then after I'm done, I can check the water level. And so as you see the water, it's kind of, there's a glare on there, but you can see the water level right there. And so we're good on the water level there. And because I'm transferring from water to sphagnum moss leca, I want to give the roots an adaptation period. So as the sphagnum moss is drying out, the roots are still growing, but they're adapting to the fact that, hey, we're getting less water than we used to get, and now this is not really water anymore. That transition process in my mind seems to be a little bit smoother if they have that opportunity to slowly acclimate to their new environment by having this be a lot more wet at first, but it's not going to get moldy or rot, because it is going to dry out. It's just going to dry out slower than if I were to go through the process of squeezing the sphagnum moss and making sure that it was moist, versus this process right here. This is a lot more wet than if I were to do it the other way. So that's the rhyme behind the reason. All right. Let's do one more. So this little guy is also an aglaonema, and I forgot the name of it. So I'll put the name of this aglaonema in there. It's very similar to the rotunda crossed with pictum tricolor, but it's a little bit different. It's more like a dark form. It's supposed to be, well, no, it's supposed to be this color, but the company that I bought it from showed it as being like really dark and then like the really strong pink veining, but that's not the case. So I guess one thing that I would say is that if you are buying a plant sight unseen, meaning that you don't know the exact plant that you're going to get, and you are looking at pictures of it, look at multiple pictures from multiple vendors of what that plant looks like, because what you might find is that this plant, or the plant that you're looking at, does not look like what they are showing in their picture. I did share with this particular company that it was a little bit deceptive, because I expected this to be almost like a dark maroon with some pink veining, and that's certainly not what I got. And I even complained. I was like, I didn't get the plant that I ordered, because I thought that I had ordered something entirely different. And then they're like, no, that's it. And I was like, okay, well, I don't think it is. But then I Googled what the plant looks like, and it just turns out that they had manipulated their picture just a little bit more than what it probably should have, and made it look like something that it wasn't. All right, so anyways, That being said, let's get this into probably the same type of substrate. We're going to go, maybe I should go in the other direction. No, we're going to go with the same thing. We're going to go sphagnum moss and leca and go that route. All right. Okay, so once again, that gives us our reservoir where the water is going to sit, and the plant's not going to get any direct contact with pure water. And we're going to put the plant in there, probably maybe a little bit more, probably about like that. Okay, we're just going to pack it in there on the sides. Got the nice IKEA tray to kind of help out and ensure that the mess I make stays contained. And we went to IKEA too, like just a couple weeks ago, and I meant to pick up another one and totally forgot. Kind of bummed about that, because I would like to have one for downstairs in the grow tent. I've noticed that a lot of times these smaller cups, because the grow tent has like a metal shelving system that's got those thin bars of metal, if you use like a small skinny cup, kind of like this one, where the diameter is really small in the base, it tips over a lot. Whereas if I was actually working on an IKEA tray, I wouldn't have to worry about that as much. But side note, not really relevant to the process that we're going through today, but it is what it is. I'm going to move this because I'd be super sad if that fell on the floor. Alright, so let's get some water going in here, and then again, same situation. I'm just going to fill it up. We're going to watch it as it fills up, and then what we're going to do is make sure that we get some moisture going into the top by going through this process right here. And again, this is just personal preference. I don't know, I just started doing it this way and I never really stopped. But now you'll notice that there's really pretty much no water down bottom, so we'll probably do another round and put more water in there just to make sure that we get a sufficient amount of water for the sphagnum moss to be nice and moist for its first 24 or 48 hours while the roots are adapting to not being in water. Okay. Alright, so now we're in a pretty good place again. Let's see, you can probably barely see that because of the glare on the screen. Maybe this side. Yeah. So you see where like you can see the water line on that. There we go. Yeah. So that's kind of where the water line is sitting. Obviously the roots are sitting farther up. But what's going to happen is as this root system grows out, you're going to start to be able to see the roots showing up on the sides, and then you'll know that it's doing well, it's happy, and that it is growing, in addition to obviously what you'll see, the visible transformation of the leaves as it continues to grow and put out new leaves hopefully as well. And so that's that process. So those two are done. Alright, and then up next what we have is, since we pulled out the pictum tricolor, we might as well as, edit, maybe, redo. So since we pulled out the pictum tricolor, we might as well as get it into some type of medium as well. It seems like it's ready. Root system looks really good on it. Again, as I've explained in previous videos, typically if you import a plant, you may lose the oldest leaf. You can lose all the leaves in full transparency, but if you're lucky, odds are you will probably just lose the oldest leaf. I'm going to leave it on here because it still has a little bit of green on it, and it's not just coming off when I pull on it just a little bit. And so it's probably not ready, and it's probably still doing something beneficial for the plant in itself. But we're going to go ahead and get this repotted into some type of media. And I'm looking around to see what I've put this in previously that's been successful. I feel like I'm gonna go with. So I'll kind of share some thoughts about this behind the scenes, or not even behind the scenes. I don't know, just some thoughts. So obviously you want to pick your medium based on what the natural environment of the plant is, in combination with your environmental preferences. Like, for example, I like to use a soilless type of substrate, even if it looks like soil, but there's really no dirt in there. Now, at the same time, though, this is a very chunky, aroid, orchidish mix. There's some pretty good size pieces of bark in there. And the reason for that is that there are some plants where they need those big chunky pieces in order to feel like they're climbing up on something. And through that process, what happens is the leaves actually get bigger. So you'll get bigger leaves through using a certain type of soil or soilless substrate in this particular case. That's also kind of why I like leca balls, because it's more, they're bigger than dirt. We'll just grab one. So obviously that's a lot bigger than a piece of dirt is, and so that's going to help both with aeration, both with the speed of draining, and with the ability for the plant to want to grow bigger leaves because it's climbing. Now, what I've also found though is that sphagnum moss, I'm almost out because I've used it for the last couple things, but that's really good for rooting. And so if I'm going to be growing a plant that I want to allow the roots to be able to thrive and manipulate the medium easily and continue to grow out and get bigger, then sphagnum moss really kind of seems to be the way to go with that. But at the same time, if I want the plant to grow big and have big leaves and feel like it's growing and it's in its more natural environment, then I might go with something that is a little bit more like this soilless type soil medium that we've got right here. And so it really kind of depends, and that's kind of why the struggle was there, because at first I was thinking, you know, I want to grow this in this medium because my goal is that if maybe closer to the words when we open up our store, we can demonstrate what we've got growing in the soilless substrate that we have, our mix that we have over here. But I think I still also need to be true to what the goal is for each particular plant. And for this particular plant, my goal really isn't for it to get really big leaves. I mean, naturally the leaves do grow out, but in full transparency, I think that they look prettier when they're a little bit more compact. And so, and I don't know if this is a plant where having the chunkier soil mix is actually going to cause it to want to grow bigger leaves. I think that might be more plant specific, and I don't know if that's one of these, I don't know if that's applicable to this particular plant. But yeah, thinking through all of those things, this almost looks like a bicolor instead of a tricolor. Oh, here we go though. No, this has got some good silver in there. All right, we're good. So thinking through all those things, I think that we're going to go ahead and go with the sphagnum moss leca mix for this particular plant as well. Maybe we'll put like the epiprenums in the swale and go from there. But this one, yeah, this is going to go in the sphagnum moss. And I think I'm going to not have enough, so I'll probably have to pause the video and grab some more. But let's get as far as we can. All right, moving on. Talking too much and watching too much Kaylee Ellen. Alright, we are definitely going to need more sphagnum moss. So, but we're in a good place. Alright, so we're going to look kind of like that. Is where we're at. Root system in there. Obviously not touching our reservoir. and we're gonna go from that. So I will be right back. I'm gonna grab some sphagnum moss and we will go from there. See you in a moment. Okay, and we are back. All right, so we've got some more sphagnum moss. We've got our Pictum tricolor, and we're gonna go ahead and get this filled in here. And I'll try to not take up too much time in this process. And then this one's got a pretty good start on its root system, so I'm gonna be a little bit more careful in how I tuck the plant into the sphagnum moss or tuck the sphagnum moss around the plant, just because I don't want to damage that root system. And because the Pictum tricolor doesn't really have a, I mean, it's got a chonk, it's got a small chonk, but it doesn't have a root ball, I guess. Well, no, it's not root ball. What's the word I'm looking for? A chonk, really. Like, I like to try and leave a part of the chonk exposed if it has a chonk, but this really doesn't have a big chonk. It's almost more like a ZZ plant. You know how the ZZ plant gets that node, and it's more like a thick ball that is completely covered. I kind of feel like the Pictum tricolor is more like that in terms of what its requirements are, and I could be totally wrong, but that's the feel that I get. Whereas something like maybe and now that I think about it, a lot of people probably don't do this because you never know how big the chunk is until you dig it out. But I was kind of thinking about like the El Chaco, where the El Chaco, the chunk it's huge, but it's usually completely covered. But I was thinking that maybe it might be better, kind of like a tree. When you're planting trees, they always tell you to leave the little top layer off. I'm going off on a tangent, but I don't know, I kind of feel that way, and I don't know why I feel that way. It's just a thought or a feeling based off of other types of, is it horticulture, agriculture? I don't know what it is. If you know what it is, leave a comment about what it is in the chat below. But anyways, tangent. But nonetheless, either way, I feel like this is one where I feel pretty confident in being able to just cover it all the way up. Alright, so one thing that you'll notice is that we'll be able to see right there how it is doing and if it is going to continue to grow out and do well in this medium, which I'm pretty sure that it will. And then this is a little bit more damp than the sphagnum moss that I was using previously, so I'm not going to worry too much about getting it too wet. But we'll go through the same process quickly. And I don't have a chopstick to go in and fill in these gaps, but I think it's going to be okay. I mean, they're not severe gaps. And then, again, tapping motion, because it does have a pretty good root system going on, and I don't want to pack it down, I'm just going to go through and I'm just going to do the little tapping motion there. The top of the plant's going to be okay. It's not a very big plant. It's not going to fall over or break or, you know, anything of that nature. Whereas if it was a big plant, maybe I wouldn't go through that process. But now we're good on that, so we'll set that aside. Let's do something with some dirt or some soilless substrate that looks like dirt. I like the sphagnum moss. It's what I started with. It's what I'm most comfortable with. But I really want to get something into some dirt here. So we're going to grab one of these Epicram pinnatum. Let's grab. Ooh, these look like they're kind of getting smashed. Hopefully I don't break one of these. Yeah, let's go this route. These guys look like they're in need. Okay. Looks like so. Something like this. Obviously, that's not ready. You are not ready. So that's going to go back in water. So we're going to set that aside. And that's probably why it looks like it's struggling a bit. Like it's like, oh, I'm so sad. It's sad because I don't know what had happened, but it doesn't have any type of roots at all yet. And it needs some roots. In fact, I have a cool little I'm gonna put this in a prop container. It's kind of cool. I'm gonna step out of frame. Stepping back in frame. So these are kind of fun. I like to use these for situations where it looks kind of super dirty when you get up close. Sorry, it's dirty, but it's okay. And it's kind of blurry too. Well, you'll see it in a second. But I like to use these for situations like this. We made some bases that also work so that it doesn't fall over. But I like this because you can use a lot less of the water, but at the same time, you can get to the height of the node that you need to get to in order to get the part where the root system is going to grow out to be submerged in the water. So come down there, take a look at that. So now where the root is, or where the root is going to be submerged in water. It might be better to show you guys on this side. Yeah, let's go like this. So right in there, focus, there you go. Right in there, you're going to see that the part where the root is going to come out and grow from is submerged in water. But I used very, very little water because of how small and skinny this container is. So I like that process. We're gonna, and sometimes if it's sitting in the grow tent, what I'll do is, if I don't want to use like the little wooden base, I'll just take a regular cup and I'll drop it inside the regular cup and do something just like that. That way it's not gonna tip over, fall over, but it's got a nice solid base. Let's come back here. It's got a nice solid base that it can sit on. So call that a cheap tip. Some people have pro tips. I'm not a pro, so we're gonna call that a cheap tip because I am cheap. Okay, let's get some of these into some dirt. This guy, same situation. You're not ready. So that one is also going to go. I don't know if it's going to be able to go on the same one. I'm going to try it. It might. Looks like it probably will. Yeah, there we go. Hopefully that's going to do okay. That's a super pretty leaf. Look at that. It's huge too. I hope that grows out and we don't have a situation where the white turns yellow because it doesn't have a root system, but it looks like it is doing okay. It's been like that for a little while. Alright, so let's drop that out of frame. Can we get one that's got some roots on it? Oh yeah, here we go. Alright, so this is ready. You're ready. Let's go up like that. So one thing that we can point out is that we've got a lot of roots going, but not only do we have roots, but you have what you call primary and secondary roots. And so this right here is going to be considered as a primary root. This right here, which is a root that is growing out of a root, is considered as a secondary root. Again, for those that are new, and not necessarily those that are pros, because this is stuff that was new to me as well at one point. And so what we know now is that because it's got a root and it's got a secondary root, this is really ready. And then another thing that's kind of cool about this is look at the variegation on that node. That's some really good variegation. It's going to be a very pretty plant is what it's going to be. And this other leaf is growing out of that variegation. So let's see if we go, yeah, maybe that way. So that's probably going to be a very well variegated leaf, because this one's mostly green and it's got just a little bit of white. because this one is growing out of predominantly the lighter color. So if you look at the way the variegation pattern goes, you've got the darker side there, and then it goes light, and then it goes dark again as you go back around. This leaf is actually growing out of the, if I can get it to focus again. Come on, you can do it. Okay, maybe it's not going to focus, but that's okay. But let's try that. This leaf is growing out of the lighter part, and so this one's probably going to have a lighter variegation or more white to it, so that's kind of exciting. Okay, we're still going to use the leca substrate or reservoir. And then we're going to put it in dirt, but we're going to give it some room. So we don't want necessarily the root system to be touching the leca balls. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of dirt in there first. So kind of like that. Nice chunky Aroid mix. And then from there, and we might even want to put more dirt in there, because I want to make sure that what I do is I give this leaf enough room to where it's not below here, because if it sits below there, it might struggle if it has to contend with the side of the cup in order to get out. And so we're going to go with a little bit more dirt even. Yeah, not a lot more, just a little bit more, so about half a cup there. And then we're going to drop it in there. And so now what we've got is the leaf. It's going to continue to grow up a little bit more before it starts to come out and expand and unfurl. But we've got enough room to where we can give it some space to do that. And let's bring this over here. For the purposes of having the dirt in a compact container, what I've done is I've just put it in here so that I can get to it easily. We have a huge bin of dirt. Well, I'm going to call it dirt, but when I say dirt, just know that there's actually no dirt in the dirt. But we have a huge bin of the soilless substrate. Oh, charcoal. That's what it was. I knew I was forgetting something. So it also has charcoal in it, because charcoal is a, what is the terminology? Charcoal fights bacteria and bad things. I don't. That's the best way I can explain it right now. And I don't want to edit this, so. But yeah, charcoal is also in there. So we're just gonna drop that all in there, like that. And just some more like this. And I personally like to try and keep the plant as centered in the cup as possible for the most part. The only exception to that is if the plant's going on a moss pole. If it's gonna go on a moss pole, I try and keep it up close to the edge because I want it to grow up the moss pole. But if it's in a situation where I don't think I'm going to be putting it on a moss pole, because in this particular case this plant's probably going to be sold before it goes on a moss pole, I'm going to go ahead and try and put it in the middle, just because I like things to be centered. But yeah, I don't know, just personal preference. And it would probably need to be moved or repotted by the time it was ready to go on a moss pole anyways. Alright, so we're going to pretty much do the same thing. We're going to just put some water, or root water, in here. And so this is a good opportunity to talk about this too. Because this particular type of soilless substrate that we're using, it has worm castings in it, but it doesn't really have anything in it as far as like fertilizer or nutrients, other than like what might break down from the bark material, because some plants want that, again, loss of words, I'm probably going to have to edit at this point, this is terrible, but some plants want that that broken down material that you would normally find on a florist floor. So it has that, but it doesn't have any of the vitamins or minerals or the stuff that you'll find in fertilizer. And so for that purpose, for these types of plants, we will use a water mix that has all of that chemical or all of that nutrient in it in order to supplement this type of plant. Now, if I were to have acquired this plant from somebody else and I noticed that it's got like the little slow release fertilizer in there, I'm probably just going to use like filtered water in order to make sure that the plant is getting the water that it needs. But I don't want to give it I don't want to overdo it as far as the nutrients goes, because if I'm giving it nutrients and it's got slowly release nutrients in it, we might be overkill in the nutrient department, and it might cause the plant to suffer from fertilization burn. And so for that purpose, if it's going into our substrate, then I'll use root water. But if it's not, and if I bought the plant from somebody else and it's in some other type of substrate, and I know that it's got slow release fertilizer mixed in with the substrate, then I will just use filtered water. And if it's a plant that's like a regular common house plant that's really hardy, like a pothos perhaps, then I might even just use regular water. Just run it under the faucet. Okay. And I think this is pretty good to go. Kind of doing the same thing as far as getting moisture into the soil, because it's coming from straight water and going into a soil and like a mix. But I'm going to turn it a lot more slowly, and then I'm going to hold it upright and it's kind of loud. Pack it just a little bit. And I like to pack it when you've got like this type of medium. I like to pack it a little bit just because it's super loose when it first goes in there. And if you pack it down, you can get a little bit more in there. You can give the plant a little bit more stability, which I think is probably going to make it a little bit more happy, and get it a little bit more dense. More dense, more compact, because you don't want the leaf or the petiole of the plant to flop around too much. Let me get back on my tray. Alright, there we go. Give it some support like that. And we'll probably put in just a little bit more dirt, or more water, not dirt. Alright. And pack it down a little bit more. And should be good to go there. Okay. So that's going to be good. It's got more water in it than you're going to want. So like once it starts to acclimate and the roots start to understand that they're no longer in water and they start to strengthen up and become acclimated to their new environment, we're going to go back to where the water line is really going to be right there. But right now, as it's going through its acclimation phase, I'm going to let it go through and have the water be up higher. And then as it dries out, the roots are going to acclimate, and then we'll go back to just having the water down there in the reservoir that's down in there. Alright, super long video. I think I have explained pretty much everything that I want to explain. And so what I'll probably do now is I'm just going to run through this process, get the rest of these taken care of, and I'm not going to speak. And if I find the desire to speak, I'll pause it, and then that way I can do this part in super fast mode and do the rest in regular mode if there's something that I want to talk to you about or explain or elaborate on. Okay, so thanks for watching so far. Let's knock out the rest of these plants, because we do have a lot of plants to go through, and if I were to continue to talk like I like to do so, we probably wouldn't get through all of this, and I got a real job to do in the morning, so I got to get this done pretty quick. Alright, thanks for watching. I will see you in a moment. speaking part. So this is one that was recently brought back in, or recently imported, I guess I should say. And so you'll notice that what I had just done just now is I slowly and easily pulled on the root system. Really, it's not a strong pull. It's kind of like, if it's much less firm than even a handshake. You got to shake somebody's hand. It's really just, you're just going to slowly pull on the roots like that. And it's been sitting in water for probably about a week, maybe 2 weeks now. And I know that the roots that are going to be strong and do well, they're not going to just fall off through this process. But the roots that aren't going to do this plant any good and are going to end up rotting and not being useful, and maybe even counterproductive at that, those are the roots that are going to fall off as I just kind of gently rub the plant. And so I want to go through that process just to make sure that the roots that are there are the good roots, and the roots that are coming off are not going to end up fouling or soiling my soilless, because I don't want to soil my soilless, right, substrate. Okay, wait, what? That was hilarious. I don't want to soil my soilless substrate, or maybe I don't want to soil my soilless soil. Yeah, interesting. And so yeah, so what we've got now is we've gotten rid of all of the bad stuff. Let's grab some of this. All of that, that's no good. That's not going to do the plant any good. Even, I'm going to go as far as saying, even like in a situation where, look at that. That looks like it was going to be a good root. Oh yeah, it's got nice light white stuff going on there. Well, actually, no, because at the very end of where that root started, it had already broken off. And so it gave up. And because of that, it's not going to do the plant any good. So I don't like to start over with rooting. So in a severe situation, sure, I might clip the roots off and start over and go bare into water and let it re-root. But this is a really strong and good root system, and these are really big leaves that root system supports. And so I want to make sure that I still have enough root system there to substantiate the ability to support these leaves, because I don't want to lose these leaves. I mean, look at how good this looks. It's already been sitting in this water for like a week or more at least, and so these roots aren't going to go anywhere. This isn't going to start to turn yellow and go bad as a result of the shipping process. If anything happens from here on out with this particular plant, it's going to be because of the transformation and going from or I guess I should better call it the acclimation of transferring from water to whatever medium I'm going to put it in. And obviously, now that I think about it, this cup's just not going to work, so I might have to revisit that. I think I don't want to use this mason jar. I think this is probably going to end up going back in the water until I can get a vessel that's big enough to support this plant. And I want to put it in something nice because I don't want to have to move it too much. But yeah, I wanted to come out of speedy mode so that I could share that with you, because I think that's an important thing that I've been sharing from my perspective and how I do things, and I wanted you all to know that. So yeah, we're going to put this particular plant back. This one kind of the same thing. That one's also got a really big root system, so I'll go through the same process. I'll gently rub those roots. And then this one, it has the stick on there because the leaf system was just so big that while it was going through the acclimation process of getting acclimated to, post-shipping acclimation is what I'll call it, it just couldn't support the weight of the leaf. But if we put a chopstick in there, we should be able to give it the opportunity. Let me drop that back in here real quick. I like to turn it so that the roots don't break as they go in there. So like that. Alright, and that guy's going to be happy like that. But so what had happened is right here, where that crease is, that's where it bent because it just couldn't support its own weight. Because in the shipping process, it lost a lot of energy, and it just didn't have enough energy to support the weight of this leaf. Because obviously, this leaf is massive, and it's kind of cool. Like, look at the little fenestrations on there. All those little holes in the middle, those are fenestration holes. And so I put it on the chopstick, and what my hope is that as it starts to get its strength back, as its root system grows back out, as the petiole starts to rejuvenate, get more water in there and more petiole material in there, hopefully it will be okay. It's got a pretty strong crease in there, so it may not, but I want to give it a fighting chance because of how big that leaf is. And then if it doesn't come back, hopefully somewhere in here there will be an auxiliary node, or basically another leaf that's ready to come out that will grow out of it. But it will take a very long time before it puts out a root that is a leaf that is as substantial as this is. So yeah, we'll hope for the best on that. Am I gonna plant? I don't know. I think this is gonna end up in the same boat. I think this is gonna go back in water, and I'm gonna try and find a vessel that's gonna house these. But for now, these are not going to get planted up. But what I will do though is I'm going to change this water out and get it back in some better water. One thing that you'll hear from, I believe it's Sean the botanist, Sean the botanist, is that he doesn't like to change the water when he's going through propagation, and I completely agree. But this scenario is a little bit different because these plants are imported. A lot of times they are chemically treated for pests and insects and things like that, and so that chemical is often still in the root system, not necessarily inside it, but on the outside. It's on the roots, it's on the leaves, and so what I want to do is let that wash out. And so I like to make sure that I change the water frequently for a couple of reasons. One, because as the plant is reacclimating, it's putting out a lot of I don't want to call it toxins, but stuff that's probably toxic to itself, because it's probably trying to release the toxins that it's receiving from the chemicals that were put on it when it went through that phytosanitary process, and it fouls the water really fast. And so I want to make sure that I don't have it sitting in that foul water. It's a combination of what it's releasing and a combination of the chemicals that were used in order to get it to pass the phytosanitary process. And it often will actually even just like foam up and get really horrible smelling. And so that process is different than propagation. I want to change the water frequently. Now, once this plant is fully acclimated and it's happy, and then I want to have it in maybe water for propagation purposes, like I cut the node, I drop the node into some water, and I'm growing out the root system, sure, I'm perfectly good, and I totally agree with not changing the water as frequently for that type of purpose. So I wanted to make sure that I shared the difference between the two of those. Okay, I'm going to get back into speedy mode. Just wanted to share that with you. This is going to get a water transplant, but not a transplant altogether, and then we'll kind of go from there. Okay, I lied. We're not going to go back into speedy mode just yet. So this is a Melanochrysum. I'm super skeptical about transplanting this because of this root system. I'm not convinced that this is going to be enough. I'm not convinced that these are going to survive. So let's use our own method here that we just talked about. And let's see what we really have going on here. Yeah. So with this, I think what I'm gonna do for now is, well, I'm kind of torn. Here's why I'm torn. Part of me wants to just take this, chop it, and throw it in a prop box, because I can cut it there, I can cut it here, I can cut it here, and I can cut it here. Problem I'm going to run into is twofold. One, I'm going to lose that leaf for sure, because it's not going to grow roots fast enough to sustain that leaf. And then maybe actually even maybe a few other concerns. Another concern is if you look at this auxiliary node, which is right, let's see, let's go like this. Right here, that brown spot in the middle, well, I don't think that brown spot is supposed to be brown. And so I'm kind of concerned as to whether or not that's really even going to activate. And so that being the case, that's probably not going to do me any good. There might be one underneath the leaf that will be okay. This one right here, so it's going to be right there when I go back up in here. See how that's just the tip is brown, so that one's probably going to be okay. And so what I'm probably going to do is we're going to try this. I really don't think this guy's going to go anywhere, so we're going to clip it there. Then I'm going to stick this in water, and I'm going to see if it builds a root system fast enough to support that leaf. If not, the leaf will go and it'll go in a prop box. With these other ones, we're going to go halfway down between each auxiliary node, and we're going to clip them. And we'll let it dry out for a little while. Well, typically I like to let it dry out for maybe only like 2 hours. I'm not as big of a proponent of letting it dry out. So something like this, and I may be wrong, you know, I could be completely wrong in this, so take this with a grain of salt. But something like this, I'm okay with letting it dry out. There's absolutely no roots that's going to die off as a result of it drying out. Now, something like this has a root system. It's not the best root system, but we pulled on the roots. The stuff that is dead has come off. I can trim it back a little bit probably. This reminds me of when Kaylee Ellen was cutting roots in one of her earlier episodes, and she got a lot of flack for it, but this is a node, it's not a full-grown plant. And a lot of people actually will cut the roots off in order to get other roots to activate, but what I've noticed for myself personally is that sometimes the roots that are growing are the only roots that are going to grow out of the node, and if you cut all of those roots off and they don't grow back from that same location because all of the root nodes have activated, it doesn't grow any roots, and that's why I don't do that. But something like this, I don't necessarily want to throw that. I don't want this to dry out. I do want to throw it in a prop box, but I don't necessarily want that to dry out. So this is probably going to go in a prop box much sooner than something like this is. This I'll dry out because I want that end to callus and I want that end to callus so that I reduce the risk of infection or rot. But this one I'll probably just throw it straight in the box because I'll consume that risk by this has already calloused over because this is the base. Remember, this is where the bottom of the plant was, and I'll just keep this part right here where the cut was, out of the moss, and I think that we'll be okay, and I have much less risk that way, plus I have a better chance of keeping my root system. So that's the process. We're going to go with that. So for now, we'll just throw those in a cup like that, let them hang out, and we'll come back to that. All right. Let's go back into speedy mode. Before I go back into speedy mode though, this is kind of cool. Basically those were all, what do you call those things? Combs? Seeds? Well, basically babies, you know. This particular type of plant, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. I want to call it a cupria, but the cupria is actually a dark, and it's not a dragon scale. Kind of looks like the dragon scale, but it's not. It's an alocasia of some sort, but those are all just from different combs, which is more like a seedling that comes out, grows underneath the soil from the parent plant or the mother plant. And I just threw them all into here, and then they started growing, and they're doing really well. And so I'll probably separate these and get them into their own individual containers, because they get pretty big, and I don't know that I would be able to sell this as a whole with this many plants in here. Where you've got like the three, like 1, 2, and 3, I might keep those together, because that would be kind of cool, because you usually see these plants sold as like individuals, but where it's got like 3 or 4, that's usually the average, and so I'll probably do that. In fact, it looks like this is probably 3 different combs. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see that in there, but you've got like one set of 3 right there, and you've got another set of 3, maybe the single, yeah, there you go. So you've got 1, and then, how do I get in here? The struggle. 2 and 3. So, oh dear, almost made a mess. So I'll probably separate it like that, so that you've got the 3 different pieces. I'm not going to do that on camera though, because that's probably going to take a lot of time. So for now, this is another one that we're going to set aside. Okay. Here we go. These, yeah, these are ready. These can go in speedy mode. All right, let's do that. Okay, we'll be back. Speedy mode. It's gonna be a long video. Hang in there, but it's really informative. At least informative from the perspective of me and the way that I do things, which doesn't necessarily mean that it's informative in form of accuracy. All right, back in action. We got a lot of planting done, or a lot of transplanting done. We're going to go ahead and take care of the last 2 plants here with you. And what we have here is a Syngonium Godzilla. Probably not a lot of people have seen that in person, either A, because it's not popular yet, or B, because it's just not a favorable Syngonium. But I brought them in because I've never seen them in person. I was curious. I thought they would be bigger. They're not. I've got some that are a little bit bigger downstairs in the grow tent, but not much bigger than this. And so honestly, I'm going to just give you my 2 cents on this particular plant. As you can see, a lot of these were chopped off because they just didn't fare so well. I'm not a fan. I feel like the way that they curl up makes it really hard to tell if there's anything going on with them from a pest perspective. And then I also feel like it makes it look like it's wilted, and even when it's not wilted, and so just not super excited about this like I thought that I would be. I think I do get it where it gets its name. So those of you that are into audio or theater, like home theater systems, or even like going to the movies, but you know how Godzilla shoots out that fire that looks like electricity, that blue fire. Well, if you look really close, let's see, that's really what that veining on the inside looks like. Glad my nails aren't super dirty after playing in all the dirt, but and I think that's where the name comes from, because that centerpiece kind of looks like that fire that comes out of Godzilla's mouth when he is blowing the flames. So yeah, I'm gonna go with the dirt mix on this. I almost want to go with like one of each, but I don't think I'm gonna do that. I think I'm just gonna go straight dirt mix. I might even propagate this one. Got one root here. They could go in a prop box. There's probably a node underneath here. I'm gonna break this off and see if there's an auxiliary node under there. There should be, and if there is, I think I'm gonna take that bottom piece and cut it and throw it in a prop box. Slowly, carefully. Oh, that's awkward. It's super small, but I think that's an auxiliary node. Right? I don't know if the camera's even going to pick that up. I doubt it really is, but that might be. It should be an auxiliary node, because usually on syngoniums, the auxiliary nodes are housed underneath the sheath from the other leaf. But it's kind of hard to tell, but we're going to try it anyways. We're going to go ahead and cut that right there. Maybe it's with this part. No. Yeah, it's definitely got to be it. So we'll give that a shot. We're going to throw that in a prop box and see what happens with that. And then the rest of this we can go ahead and throw. I'm going to use dirt or soilless substrate that looks like dirt on this one for both of these. Still going to go with the same method from this perspective. Create our reservoir. And I honestly think that I think it was the headless YouTuber, but I really think that this helps with not having to water so often. I know that there's some people that are just not a proponent of going with a drainless container, but for me, I have found that I've had fairly good success with it for the most part. Some of the bigger Aroids, like the bigger anthuriums, I'll still go with a draining substrate, or a drain, not obviously draining substrate, but also with a drain hole in the bottom of the container, just because I noticed that they like to get really wet really fast and then stay really dry. And so I can soak them and then stick them in probably like one that has a hole in the bottom, and then the one that has a hole in the bottom, I'll stick it in another cup that doesn't have a hole in the bottom and just kind of let it wick up what it needs. And I found success in that, and so that's probably right now my one exception to utilizing a cup or a container that doesn't have a drainage hole in it. Oh my, it's getting late. It's been a long week. It's been an exciting week though. Man, I'm so excited. Oh my gosh, I'm telling you. In the next day or two, hopefully, maybe like Friday or Saturday, I can do a video on why I've been so excited, but so, I don't want to say secretive, but just, you know, there's nothing worse than expecting something to happen, talking about it, bragging about it, and then it not happening and being embarrassed. And so I don't want to go through that process. And that's kind of why I've been kind of not sharing so transparently about this. But if all goes well, you'll know soon enough. All right, let's see. Godzilla. Soundtrack makes for great reference material if you're an audiophile. In fact, if you're an audiophile and a plant-phile, there's probably not many of us out there. Drop me a comment down below. I'm curious. If you use Godzilla as reference material for your home theater system, drop me a comment down below. Like half of my audience is probably like, okay, changing channels. Alright, I'm gonna call that good. Didn't put very much. Probably could have put more Leka balls in that one, but we'll see. Maybe this will thrive out of neglect. And another thing that I'm kind of thinking about right now is like syngoniums. I don't think they really need as chunky of an aroid mix as, say, like your philodendrons and your anthuriums. And so this might be a little bit of overkill in the chunkiness department. And I mean, orchid mix bark, it's expensive. So if you're buying orchid mix bark, that might be something worth looking into. If you're not, it might not be such a big deal. But for me, I'm thinking it might make sense to have another substrate that is a little bit slower draining and has a little bit less of the more large bark material. Like this is actually probably a pretty decent sized one, but some of these in here for some of the bigger aroids, they get kind of big, and that might not be necessary for something like this because I don't think the syngonium really requires that. If you know otherwise, please share and drop a comment down below as well, because I'm curious to know what everybody's thoughts are on that. My personal thought is it's probably cheaper to not have that in there and maybe go with like a pumice and Leka balls. Leka balls are also kind of expensive, but maybe like a pumice, cocoa mix, charcoal, worm casting, and maybe not so much the bark. Just maybe even instead of bark going with sphagnum moss. You know, I wonder if a mix like that might make more sense for a syngonium. Just because I don't know that they need that. I know that the drainage part, yeah, it's probably still good to have a good drainage or a good draining soil, but I don't think they need that chunkiness to grab onto in order for the roots to get bigger. But if you know otherwise, let me know. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are. Drop this back in here, and I think that's pretty much it for today. So lots of plants got transitioned from water into some type of substrate. We did a little bit of everything. We've got some that went into straight leca, or actually I think only one. We've got some that went into sphagnum moss. We've got some that went into the leca and soil mixture. Got to use my new scooper. Picked this up at Hobby Lobby for I think like $4, and I don't think it was on. Was it Hobby Lobby? Yeah, I don't think it was on the 40% off sale. I should have done that, but I like it. It's cool. I have the plastic one, but I think that for long-term duration and I don't know, structural integrity is the way that I think about it, but that's not a good way to put it. This will last longer than plastic. Let's use simple words. It'll last longer than plastic. So, and I like it. It's cool. It's metal. So that's pretty much it for today. Super excited. Stay tuned. Watch upcoming videos. I'm sure there's going to be one in there that's going to kind of talk through all of my secrecy about what's coming up and kind of go from there. And if there's something that you want to see that's different, or something that you want to see that you haven't yet, let me know. I really want to hear what you guys' thoughts are. I really would like to not interject, but connect. I'd like to connect with you guys and have conversation, you know. And so I always watch the comments, and I always comment when somebody comments. So make sure to do that. Again, this is super long. I'm going to speed through a lot of it, so hopefully it'll slow it down. But I appreciate you. Thank you. And good stuff is coming, I hope. Okay, enjoy. Shut this off. Bye.